I finished South of Midnight, and I'm sad about it because I've been looking forward to this game for like 2.5 years. From the very first reveal trailer that was like their CG pre-rendered concept trailer kind of thing from the Xbox showcase, I believe it was in 2023. I was so on board. And I remember saying to my wife Mariah, I was like, oh my gosh, that looks gorgeous because it's doing like an intentional stop motion emulation and 3D animation thing. There's no way the game's going to look like that. And then bam, with the gameplay reveal in 2024, it looked like that. And in the full game, it looks like that. It looks great. And I think that's the first thing I want to talk about is that the art style for South of Midnight is I can't say it's my favorite part because I have a million favorite parts of South of Midnight, but I do love the art style so much. If I had to guess, I would say that the animators working at Compulsion, I mean, I'm sure they looked at a whole bunch of different kinds of stop motion animation to draw inspiration for the game. But there are some of the moments in the cutscenes where it just looks and feels so perfectly Laika. Laika? Laika, the animation studio that makes Paranorman, made Paranorman, Kubo and the Two Strings. I've watched their movies all the time. What's wrong with my brain? Coraline. No, Laika wasn't Coraline, was it? What's happening to me? That's what happens when you turn 30. Your brain disappears. Who made Coraline? Pause. Yeah, they made Coraline. Okay, it's Laika. And then Box Trolls and Missing Link, and I think that's all of them. And then they've got a new one coming soon. What was I talking about? Oh my gosh!
You said that their animation, you think that
Yes! Thank you. I love you. You're perfect. The animation feels in some cutscenes exactly like it's just got so much Laika flavor. And that could just be that they nailed stop motion stuff in the cutscenes. And of course it isn't stop motion, it's all 3D rendered and the cutscenes are pre-rendered and the game itself has in-game assets that they animate differently. And I think that the in-game animation, which yes, you can turn off the stop motion effect for the in-game animation when you're actually playing the game, but I wish that there was an option to turn the stop motion effect up. Because when you're actually playing the game, it's a whole lot more subtle. And at the same time, I mean, I understand why they did that, because they want the players to be able to read and understand the visual action going on the game when they're playing, you know. But I would have loved even more style to the stop motion stuff, and if they pushed it just a little bit further. But I am a psychopath. But I still think it looks really good. It looks very good. And just the art for all of the environments. The whole game is very Southern Gothic. Duh. But the environments themselves, and to a certain degree, the essence of the plot as it becomes a little bit more fantastical the deeper you go, it also felt very Lewis Carroll, very Alice in Wonderlandy, especially when you're suddenly walking around giant peaches and buildings that are falling apart on the side of a building and going further down the rabbit hole kind of thing. It felt very Lewis Carroll in a fun way. I love that. There are so many influences pulled from a million different places for South of Midnight, and they all congeal into one wonderful melting pot for a brand new experience, I think. Let me get my notes here. Elden Ring is proof that you can have an open world game and still have amazing art style. But one of the things I really like about South of Midnight being a linear game is linear games can show you specific parts of their art style a whole lot more effectively. They have a little bit more control. And I know that some people really love player freedom. Player freedom's fine and good, but I also want more experiences where it's a little bit guided. Show us, like, the linear nature of South of Midnight makes it so you can have a whole lot more, ooh, wow, look at this specific thing at this specific time kind of moments. The pacing for the story and the gameplay and the combat scenarios and the moments where you're exploring a slightly open area and the moments where you're moving down a platforming corridor, it allows them to have such a strong sense of pacing, which so many games struggle with, open world or not. Pacing is hard. But I think South of Midnight's pacing is one of its strongest, most technically well done bits. The pacing, both gameplay and story-wise, boom! Super good. And going back to the animation a little bit, just wowie, zowie, mega zowie, the animation is good. Cutscenes have characters making really small, subtle facial expressions, which allows the actor performances to come through even more. In gameplay, The combat is super easy to read. There's a whole bunch of accessibility options that you can have for, like, you can have enemy damage indicators a bit more obvious. You can have enemy health bars and stuff so that you can interpret the combat a whole lot easier. There's even a whole bunch of in-depth accessibility options for people to play if they're blind and just rely on audio only, which is very neat to see. But you can also take elements away if you prefer to take elements away. For me, I don't like seeing enemy health bars, and I love that I could turn them off. And personally, I thought that was really fun for the type of experience that I look forward to in games like this, because the haints, as they're called, the main enemies that you fight, the more damage they take, the more unstable they look. They start to come apart at the seams and have the red glowing light that's in them sort of spilling out. And I loved parsing the action on the battlefield, looking for the ones that I damaged up a bit, because you throw enemies here and there and they zoom around, so sometimes they can get lost. But keeping an eye out for the ones that are more damaged by watching the way that they're oozing out of themselves was really fun. I like to do that. And on the subject of combat, usually when I'm writing or making a review for a game like this, I do my best to not mention other reviews or popular critiques and things. But something that bothered me when reviews started coming out for South of Midnight, and now that I've played it myself to completion, a whole bunch of people complaining that the combat felt repetitive. And, you know, if I'm being honest, I can understand that complaint, especially if you're playing on a super easy difficulty and you're someone who doesn't want the game to just be unchallenging. I could see it on a very easy difficulty being a bit more boring. And even on the hardest difficulty, maybe you find it a bit repetitive. But for me, the combat was so nice and simple, and such a nice change of pace from all the games I guess I've personally been playing. And maybe that's the wrong way to judge a game as well, by comparing it to so many other things. But I don't know, I loved how the skill tree was nice and simple. The game was about 12 hours for me to finish, which is just a nice, easy breezy runtime. And I don't think any bit of it overstayed its welcome, especially the combat. And one of the reasons is that I love the combat animation so much. I think I would have been happy with the combat and the skill tree that we had, even if the game was twice as long, personally, because I just liked seeing the combat happen. I just liked drinking in the way that the animation looked, the way that Hazel executes enemies, the way the enemies move and flow, and the battle music going on the whole time. I was not bored by the combat one whit, personally. And as I said, there's a whole bunch of accessibility options. You can really custom tinker tailor soldier spy the combat to whatever you want it to be. You can make it easier, you can make it harder, whatever you want. And I should probably say, when I was saying that the combat might feel a bit more uninteresting if you put it to easy, that's not me bashing people playing it on easy modes. Like, if you want it to be easy, you could breeze right through it. In fact, and some people might get really peeved about this because people are strange, you could skip combat encounters if you want. If you're someone who just wants the story and you want to control a character moving in a 3D space and do a little light platforming, you can skip the combat. There's an option to turn that on. And I think a much younger me would have been like, well, why even put it in the game? But it is in the game, and it's nice to have as an option for people who want that option. On the subject of challenge, if there's any part of South of Midnight that I personally wish was a little bit more challenging, I'd say the platforming. I still think it's good and fun, because I just liked seeing the animations, and I think it has some bits where you do need to stay on your toes and to pull off some serious platforming moves. But that's like the tiniest nitpick that I have, is that the combat, well, not combat, my brain just had a tumor, is that the platforming could have been pushed just a little bit further, especially because I love that when you're wall running, you have the option to move Hazel up and down using the right stick. That felt great, and I would have loved to have to use that a lot more creatively, like more frantic wall jumping segments where you got to really be careful about avoiding things by moving Hazel up and down. But at the same time, what was here I thought was really good. And now here's a segue to the music. Oh my freaking MR stars. I don't know if there's going to be a soundtrack this year that I enjoy more than the soundtrack for South of Midnight, which is crazy to say because Doom the Dark Ages is next month. You know what I'm saying? That's gonna slap. But South of Midnight, oh my gosh, it's amazing stuff. just the instrumentation for cutscenes, the instrumentation as you're running around, battle music, the fact that each boss has a fully lyricized song that plays as you're fighting them, and little bits of it are teasing as you're going up to fight the boss, like when you're moving from environment to environment, and you're working on a specific section of the game, like for Tuto Tom, the giant alligator. There's this little chorus of creepy children singing that's drifting in, telling you the story of Tom in between sections, and they do this for each boss, and it's amazing. And so cool. And one of the creepiest, coolest, bestest parts is that Hazel's Weaver spinning magic, anytime you use it with a double jump or gliding or one of her attack abilities, you hear that chorus of singing coupling the movement. Coupling might be the wrong word. Paired with the movement? I don't know. And I could be totally wrong, but I think that they did some kind of super wizardry, and whatever move you do, whatever choir song plays at the same time as that move, it syncs up harmoniously with whatever is playing in the background music at that time. I could be wrong, but it sounded like that regularly, and it was really cool. And it just adds a huge amount of flavor to the powers that Hazel gets. It makes them feel even more unique, that they have this ethereal presence to them. Super great. Also, on the subject of the boss fights having songs with lyrics, do you know how rare it is for video game music with lyrics to be good? Yes, it can be done. I know it can be. But so often, video game music with lyrics can feel weird and strange. I've been singing these songs for weeks because the soundtrack came out before the game, but they're all stuck in my head. I was humming along to them, singing them as the fights were happening, and I'm singing them still after. Like, I love the songs for the bosses. Super, super, super duper much.
No, the bell! Sick green sky and tornadoes flying. How much longer until the river's rising? Birds fall silent and the critters are hiding when mucky swamps and dusty lands colliding.
One of the things about the lyrics for the boss songs is it makes them feel like local legends, because they are. They're folklore. It's all deep Southern Gothic folklore-inspired stuff, and it just gives it a whole bunch of world building. It feels like little nursery rhymes almost for the creatures that you're going up against. And that leads me, this is a much better segue. It wasn't until I mentioned that it was a segue into the game's story. Bam! Loved it. Loved it so much. The Southern Gothic vibe has been nailed hard. There's Southern Gothic inspirations everywhere. There's some Edgar Allan Poe kind of stuff. I mean, they even have a giant spray painted on a wall of Raven that says Nevermore. I loved that. There's some Flannery O'Connor. There's some Shirley Jackson. I love how Southern Gothic it feels. They nailed it hard. This is very much an M-rated game. And not in the way that most M-rated games are M-rated, like just over-the-top gratuitous violence kind of stuff. It's smart. It's mature. It doesn't do anything to gross or freak you out, but it does handle mature topics and themes. And I think it handles all of them with the exact amount of reverence that these kind of topics should be handled with. And it never puts any kind of symbolism or message that's trying to be poked at front and center, shoved in your face in a weird, over-the-top, distracting you from the actual narrative that's going on. This is how you do symbolism in a story, not just a game, but like it feels like the kind of symbolism that should happen. Like from all of these inspirations that I was talking about from Southern Gothic literature. It's symbolism that you can find that's in the background, but it's not so in the background that you're like scratching your head and wondering if there was any kind of message or symbolism there. It's so good. The story, as far as I'm concerned, is airtight. There might be some little hitches here and there, but they're the usual little hitches that come with a game like this that has hundreds of employees working on it and tons of hands, and you have a time frame and a schedule, and you just got to push it out the door with what's ready. That makes it, now when I say that, it makes it sound like, oh, so there's some big problems. No, I don't think the game has big problems. I think, like, as a small example, there's a character who's introduced when you're about 3/4 of the way through the game, and I still think they work really well, but I would have liked maybe just a little bit more extra time with them, but that is the teeniest nitpick about the story. It is so well paced. Characters are very well explored. Characters have fun, unique personalities. They have motives. They have a range of emotions. They're not all just one note saying the same thing all the time, very static. It's rare to have a game that has characters that feel this alive and lived in. And most of that, I think, is due to the writing and the actors that they got. Phenomenal. Amazing performances across the board. There's not a single character that I don't think was voiced perfectly. In fact, of all Xbox first-party games I've ever played, this is easily the most strongly acted one ever. There is not a single weak link in this cast. Phenomenal, phenomenal, phenomenal. One of my favorite standouts, who I'm sure is a favorite for many people, Catfish. Holy crap, he's great. In so many other stories and games where you have the character like Catfish who's a little bit funny, he would just be, that's the comedic relief. And he does offer some comedic relief, but he also is integral to the plot. And he's not just some one note, I'm here just for the jokes. He has some emotional moments of his own, and they don't feel forced or weird. And it melds perfectly with what Hazel has going on through her whole experience of the story.
Oh, no, mortified to a fan, no. You can't see strands, can't you? Like knots, tangles, thingies.
Thingies? What are you talking about?
Like strings floating in the air.
Oh, yeah.
Well then, I can teach you the rest. And a train weaver ought to be able to rescue her and Mama easy. I can even help you find her. When you get me down, of course.
And Hazel, heavens above, I love Hazel. It is so rare to have a protagonist who can make mistakes. One, a protagonist in a video game who makes mistakes, period. Because if they do make mistakes, they usually don't in games. Hazel makes mistakes, and she owns up to them, and she talks about them, and they help her progression and her growth through the story. And even when she's making mistakes, she's not some insufferable little twit. So many protagonists suffer from, I'm a piece of crap. Final Fantasy 15, Noctis, will forever be my example of a protagonist that you almost hate playing as just because he's such an insufferable little bastard. Hazel? No. You can see her weaknesses and stuff that she has going on as a character. She's a little bit impatient, a little bit naive, maybe a little bit overconfident at times, but those are things that propel the story, things that help her as she's going about each of the plot points and experiences and meeting new people and having new things happen and learning more about the world and herself and her powers and trying to save her mom, etc., etc. And having a character with all of these facets, especially ones that are considered weaknesses, it helps her better quality stand out too, because she's funny, but she's not funny quippy. It's so nice to have a sense of humor that doesn't rely on just delivering jokes every 2 seconds like I'm stuck in a frickin' Marvel film.
That's a nice story. You mind if I take a look around?
Oh, sure don't. You can see every place old Molly terrorized and more. Now for the low price of $1.
You take debit?
Hazel is easily the star of the show. I mean, she's the protagonist, duh. But I have to give respect to the actress who played her. I believe her name is Adrienne Ray. Adrienne? I don't know. It's spelled Adrienne, but I'm probably saying it super wrong. She did amazing. And looking at her acting background, she's done mostly TV stuff before. This is her first video game thing. You'd think she'd been doing games her whole life. She nailed it. I was so impressed to learn that this was her first game, because some people think it's just one-to-one, you can move right over, but I've heard too many accounts from too many different actors and stuff that doing games and the mocap and the voice booth stuff is just different from what they're used to. She nailed it, and we need her in more games. If not another South of Midnight kind of thing, we just need her to come to the game industry. Leave the TV world behind and join the game industry, please. One of my favorite little touches that they did with Hazel is that anytime you pick up a piece of lore in the game, like a little flavor text that you find that is just laying out there like a piece of paper, you know this stuff. You've played video games. You know what I'm talking about. She always comments on it, and it is always specific to the thing that you just picked up.
Always wondered why Miss Pearl insisted on using real iron nails in her garden beds.
So it feels like she read it herself. That is so small, it might sound like the littlest thing ever, and it kind of is, but it has a huge effect to make the world feel even more alive, and to make Hazel feel more alive, and to give us a window into her thoughts. And it's so much better than just having her be like, I'm walking along and I see a big tree, which too many video game protagonists do when they feel like they just need to fill empty air. Her addressing the little lore pickups, perfect, wonderful solution, loved it. I absolutely loved the game to death. I want to play through it multiple times. It, to me, feels like a new all-timer favorite for me. It's one I'm going to think about for the rest of this year, one I'm going to think about long into the future. I absolutely loved it. It met my expectations in almost every way, and in other ways it exceeded my expectations. Loved the music, especially the boss fights, and the way that the music would sync up with the boss fight stuff for these huge, transcendent, emotional, soul-searing moments with the music as a big crescendo to what's going on as you've been learning about these creatures the whole time you're exploring the area they live in, and it's just this magical crescendo of a moment.
I break my bones, I rend my skin, bricks turn to dust, and rage runs in.
Super good stuff. I would give it an easy S. Easily a front runner for my personal game of the year for 2025. And potentially one of, if not the best Xbox published games I've ever played. I loved it. Loved it to death. I've seen a lot of people saying they want a sequel. I'm not sure if I want a sequel because I love seeing Compulsion games jump from completely different game to completely different game to completely different game. But maybe now that they've laid out a lot of groundwork, they could do a sequel. I don't know. But at the same time, South of Midnight has such a specific story that it wants to tell with the characters that it has that I feel immensely satisfied with its ending. If there is never another if the story never continues, I'd be okay with that because it's just a perfectly no fat on it, nice, trim, well-paced, perfect little game. And when I say little, it's little in price and little in runtime, sure, but I would have easily paid a whole lot more for it because of how much I loved it. And it's got so much talent and care and love put into it. It's like a AAA indie game, much like last year's Hellblade 2, Senua's Sacrifice. It is a huge budget compared to indie games, but it has the heart and soul and spirit and oomph of an indie game. I think that the greatest thing about South of Midnight, in the same spirit with it being a AAA indie game thing, is that it just, every ounce of the game, every artistic direction, from the amazing sound design to the music to the animation to the story to the voice acting, every little piece of human-made art feels like it comes together in this wonderfully intentional package. Nothing feels out of place or like it was done by accident. Everything works together to create one gigantic, beautifully united picture at the end of it. One picture that is a playable video game, of course. Loved it so much. Go play it. It is on PC and Xbox. It is also on Game Pass for both of those systems. $40 if you don't want Game Pass. $40? Are you kidding me? That's an amazing deal for a game this friggin' good. Hopefully it comes to PlayStation soon so they can make even more money and more people can play it. Because I want Compulsion games to stick around. You hear me, Xbox? If you shut them down, I'm gonna throw my cat through the window. He did nothing wrong. Save my cat, Xbox. Keep Compulsion around. Okay, goodbye.
Hey, Hazel.
Who's there?
You up here.
Where?
My salvation.
A talking fish? Nope. Ain't no way.